What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new episode of the Pro-Black Blurred Kingdom podcast. It's been a minute since I talked to y'all, and it's because I've been busy. I've been having a lot of stuff going on in the background and trying to get a lot of stuff together. But today, I wanted to talk about something that I found to be very interesting. So, a lot of you all may not know about this, but there is a new platform that's out that's called Threads. And it's supposed to be the Twitter, or I guess X, whatever the hell you want to call it at this point, version of Instagram. And so I actually have been putting a lot of commentary on Threads as of late because I wanted to just create somewhat of a presence there the same way that I had done on Instagram. So the purpose of it is to give people a different side of my personality, because usually when you see me on Instagram, I'm talking about different topics related to pro-blackness and media. But with Threads, I talk a little bit more about myself and my interest in things like that. But I still kind of go deep with certain things, you know. So I made this thread post that ended up going semi-viral. I say semi-viral because it got quite a bit of likes for what my page typically does. And a lot of people chimed in, people I never heard before. But basically, the topic was terms that I think are the most annoying and need to be erased. And specifically what I'm talking about is in terms of black people and things that we should not say. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the list of the 10 terms that we should no longer use as black people. And then I'm going to talk about some goofy ass troll who decided to come onto my profile and talk shit to me about this. Number 10, critical race theory. The main reason why I do not like the term critical race theory is because it's essentially a term of fear, a term of cowardice, really. Folks just don't want to say white supremacy. Just say fucking white supremacy. That's all you have to say. White supremacy is all critical race theory is truly about, because the white supremacists were the main ones who actually created racism and oppressed everyone and created the system that we're currently trying to quote unquote function in. So to say critical race theory is to assume that there's some questionability around the idea that racism or the issue of race exists when it's an intangible reality. So that's why I don't like that term. Just say white supremacy and just call it a day. Number 9 is African Americans. I hate this term because, first of all, this term is disingenuous to the lineage of who they're speaking about. The real term or terms, there's 2 you could use. There's one I prefer, but there's 2 you could use, in my opinion. And there may be a few others out there that I'm probably missing. So if you think of them as you're listening to this, feel free to throw it in the comments. That's cool. But the 2 terms that African Americans need to be substituted with are either foundational Black Americans or with Black American freedmen. Some people may say Black American, but I think even that doesn't truly embody what needs to be said. African Americans assumes this theory that the black people that are in America are simply miscellaneous Africans that don't know what part of Africa they come from, but they just happen to be in America. And that's not true. We were native to the land. We were indigenous to the land. We were already here, and our folks actually built the country. So for me to say African American, one, throw salt on my own lineage. The second thing that it does is it gives individuals who are not black at all a chance to actually claim this as a title, which could actually hurt us in the long run, especially if we're talking about reparations and other things like that, such as, for example, Elon Musk. He could call himself an African American because technically he's from South Africa, or Charlize Theron. I hope I said her name right. She could consider herself an African American because technically she is from Africa, but they both happen to just be in America. So they could technically say that term for that reason. It also is a term that could be used by somebody who is from the diaspora as if they're native to the soil as well, too, which is also disingenuous to not only just their lineage, but it's disrespectful to us individuals who actually come from this land. So I don't like that term. I don't use it. Number 8 I have here is inclusion. The problem with the term inclusion is that it's pathetic. It just shouldn't be used. The only people who really use the term inclusion are liberals, specifically white liberals, but I find a lot of like non-blacks use it as well too, because essentially what they want is they want white acceptance. They want white people to be able to have them in their spaces. So they use this term quite often. And it's usually a term of advocacy, like they're trying to advocate for inclusion, being in these white spaces or being in spaces where they typically have not been allowed to show up in as themselves, with or without discrimination, probably is a better way to put it, without racism, without being treated a certain way. So inclusion is a pathetic term, and I don't think that we should use it at all. Number 7 is toxic masculinity. I don't like the term toxic masculinity, and this is kind of deviating a little bit from the race thing to a certain extent, but I wanted to kind of talk about it for a bit. I don't like toxic masculinity mainly because it's attributing a negative toxicity to an actual gender energy. So in other words, you have masculinity and you have femininity. So whenever you call that toxic, you're generalizing it by saying that that energy can actually be toxic, when in fact it is an act by an individual who could be toxic themselves, not necessarily the energy. The energy is what it is. It has a good side. It has a bad side. It's a yin and a yang. It has two sides to it. And that's basically how both of them work, femininity and masculinity. And notice too, people typically don't say toxic femininity. And that's because toxic masculinity has become a buzzword that people like to use when they like to generalize black men who they believe are toxic. I don't like that ideal. My thing is, if there's somebody who has done something toxic, whether they be a man or whether they be a woman, just say that that person is toxic, but don't generalize an entire sexual energy. Or gender energy, whatever you want to call it. Number 6, cisgender. Totally disrespectful. Totally disrespectful. I don't like it. I don't like who made the term. I don't like the idea of using that term so other people can feel comfortable. My thing is, if you have to, because people even ask me this question, if you have to, absolutely have to describe me in a way where you're not using cisgender, just say I'm a damn biological born male. Or if it was a woman, just say they're a biologically born female. I really don't think it's necessary to just do all of that. I really just don't. So don't use that term with me. I prefer not to be called that term. Number 5, minority. Minority is an awful term, and it is benign neglect on crack. And let's talk about that for a second. I don't like it because ultimately minority can be anything. It can be anything from black to white to Indian to Hispanic to woman to gay. So it's now not just even mixing up different races and conflating them. It's now taking races, religions, national origins, and even sexual orientations, and then conflating them all into one thing. So anytime somebody talks about a minority, they could be talking about any of these things. But ultimately, they all get used against black people because it turns into a form of benign neglect. That's what I really don't like about it. And ultimately, between that and then even using like the people of color thing and stuff like that, this is that one term where it almost goes beyond the bounds of just talking about like race itself. And even like when there's programs or different things that are implemented, it ends up being used against black people. Like, I'm gonna give you an example. Look at the whole affirmative action thing. That was supposed to be for the purpose of helping black people, specifically foundational black Americans. But the main people who ended up being able to take advantage of that were white women. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, these are just different minorities who were able to take advantage of this. So some people, when they're talking about minorities, they may mean black, but they may mean woman owned. or they may mean something else. So I don't like the idea of conflating all of these different things instead of separating them and talking about the specific issues of each group. In this case, I don't like the fact that it totally negatively impacts Black people. Number 4, Black on Black crime. Black on Black crime is a myth. It's a straight up myth. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it exists because a Black person, they can harm another Black person. You know, they get into that bullshit ass talk, that goofy shit. But the reality is that Black on Black crime doesn't exist because it's simply just crime. Or you can call it crime of proximity. Either or, but the reality is that it's crime. Most people commit crimes against people of the same race as them. So Black on Black crime is no different than white on white crime, or white Hispanic on white Hispanic crime, or whatever the case is, because ultimately they commit the act of doing something bad mostly to somebody who is of the same race and even like lineage than them. And so with that being said, Black on Black crime is typically used when white supremacists are trying to deflect from their role and how they oppress, harm, and kill Black people. It's a deflection point. So in other words, if somebody goes to a white person, they say, oh, you guys are racist and your racism hurts, kills, etc. Black people. They can go back and they say, oh, what about Black on Black crime? So it's as if they're pointing out what Black people do to themselves in order to absolve themselves from racism. So instead of it being an issue where racism and white supremacy is what causes all of these issues, what they're essentially saying is that it's just an issue of bad people. So it erases racism and their role in creating and implementing it, taking it out of the question. That's really what they're doing. Number 3, Black and Brown. Black and Brown really is for the purpose of undermining the needs of Black people. You really, in this case, should just not say it. You just shouldn't say it at all, because that brown is always ambiguous as shit. That brown could be a Hispanic fucking person. You're not even defining what the race of that Hispanic person is. That's the other fucked up thing about the shit. I mean, they could be an Indian person. Like, they could be anybody else who's outside of being Black, but who's also not white as well, too. Black people, you do not have to say this shit every single time there is an atrocity. You can speak up for yourselves. I mean, literally, like, pick your balls up and just speak up for yourself. That's all you have to do. So when you say Black and Brown, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to soften the blow of talking about my needs, because the only time that Black and Brown is ever really discussed is when that community or those communities are being impacted. So instead of just saying, oh, the Black community is being impacted negatively, you're saying Black and Brown in order to throw them in there. But I'll tell you one thing, the quote unquote brown community, I don't care which one of the people that are getting substituted for this term it is, those people are not advocating for you how you're advocating for them out of fear. Number 2, BIPAC. BIPAC sounds stupid, and it is stupid. It's just another extension of what number 1 is. The only reason why this term is not number 1 is because it's used less, but it is just as stupid as number 1, which is people of color. The reality is that Black people need to stop using terms such as BIPOC and people of color. And the reason why is because these two terms are terms of benign neglect. These terms are terms of erasure. That's the even worst part about it. They're terms of erasure, because essentially what you're doing is you're not allowing Black people to authentically get spoken about, especially in situations where they're asking for something that they were owed a long time ago, or when they're speaking about injustices that have been done to their group specifically. Black people, stop saying this bullshit. Every time you say this bullshit, I fucking cringe. I feel like my motherfucking eyes are bleeding. Just say Black. Just say motherfucking Black. It's not that hard, y'all. Damn. And, you know, I do a lot of social justice work. I hear people drop that damn people of color bomb all the time, and I really just want to slap the cat shit out of them. I mean, like, really, why do you got to say that shit every 5 seconds? Just say Black. And if you're not talking about fucking black people, just talk about whatever group it is you're talking about. Because I guarantee you one thing. I can't think of one situation, not one, where all or multiple people, whether it's black and Indian and Arabic people or whoever it is, I cannot think of one situation where all of these people should be used in the same sentence or in the same statement where they've all been impacted in the same amount. It's just not a thing. Black people are always, if you really look at history, they've always been the most negatively impacted individuals and the least atoned for out of all groups. So it's disingenuous to group them with other people as if you're grouping different struggles, but equating them as if they're the same and giving them either the same level of attention or just giving far less to black people. Usually it's that second one. You're giving far less to black people because we still don't have reparations. We don't even have laws that protect us. So how dare you sit there and group us with a bunch of people who didn't go through what we went through and were never atoned for the way that we've been basically deprived. That's fucking ridiculous. Black people, if you're listening to this podcast right now, get rid of all these damn terms because I probably will correct you. And if you don't want to correct yourself on it, I probably will clown you because this bullshit has got to go. It is 2023, almost 2024. We need to get codified and we need to start saying things that are going to be helpful to our people. We need to start speaking up for ourselves. And these terms, it ain't it, bruh. It ain't it. So now that brings me to my troll experience. I had a goofy little bitch ass tether called themselves coming onto my platform just to whine like a hoe about what I stated about these 10 terms, right? And so I want to kind of read to you all what he said, and then I want to talk about how I responded to what he said as well too. So he decided to repost what I said. And his initial comment was, "Man doesn't read." That's what he said about me. And I responded back to him and I said, "Please elaborate on man doesn't read," in quotations. He responded back and he said, "You stuffed about 60 odd years of doctoral work into a list you don't like and want elaborating to question marks, and then no." And then I said, "I'm not sure what any of this has to do with whether or not I can read or my ability to read, which you would know nothing about because you don't know me. Anyway, it sounds like you were just babbling in bad faith and saying random things. Hell, you don't even know and never even try to inquire on why I think these terms are annoying. Looks to me like the real issue is," and I put this in quotations, "man can't make complete sentences or draw critical conclusions." He then responded and said, "You wrote half a thesis on other theses on a Snapple top cap based on what you quote unquote like. Don't bandy bad faith as you piss on the works of your betters." That's what this bitch ass motherfucker said to me. And then I responded and I said, "Sir, you went from trolling and talking like a damn caveman to babbling in bad faith like an angry little bitch in a matter of a few statements. What I like and dislike is based on the truth as it pertains to blacks specifically. Now go calm your little keyboard warrior ass down." Okay. So the first thing that I noticed is that this fool has Poppy in his name. Now, unless he's Drake or some shit, sounds to me like he's a tether, because when I hear Poppy, the first thing that comes into my head is Hispanic. And then I looked on his page and I saw that he was posting a lot of different things about Palestine, and he was talking about other like social justice issues and things like that. So I'm like, okay, so this guy is just kind of babbling and talking real angry, talking real crazy on his profile. And I'm sitting there looking and I'm like, I know this tethering motherfucker did not just talk about my quote unquote betters. He has no right to talk about morality in any fashion or honor when this motherfucker fled, like literally got up and ran from his damn homeland. How the hell are you ever going to talk about betters? You don't have any type of honor because you ran here. You could have been somewhere in like fucking Mexico eating a goddamn taco, and you're talking shit to me. Somebody who is talking about black empowerment in terms that we need to get rid of for my people. And you want to sit there and you want to open your mouth to say some of the shit that you said to me? No, you can go fuck yourself with a damn enchilada. That's what you can go do. You are not going to sit there and talk shit to me on my platform about me speaking up for my people and encouraging them to do things and to speak in a way that is not just empowering, but also shows that they care about getting solutions done for their people, for our people. Because ultimately, those terms are, again, either terms of cowardice, terms of erasure, terms of benign neglect, or they're just blatant indoctrinated lies. So for this fool to even think that it is appropriate to even try to have a back and forth conversation with me about what I know is good for my people and empowerment, you can get the fuck up out of here with that. So yeah, a lot of people too, like they responded to everything that I had said. A lot of people had a lot of different responses. I had one person basically come on there and, you know, there's a little male supremacist who came on there as well too. And he was sitting there trying to chastise me about the difference between minority doesn't, he was on some bullshit talking about, well, dude, you know, minority doesn't just mean, you know, talking about, you know, race. I mean, it could mean majority versus minority, man. Like he was on some like some male supremacy type shit. You know, these fools, they want to talk to you like you're stupid, like you don't know no better. Like what the hell that got to do with the hell I'm saying? My thing is, and then he started asking a bunch of questions about like why minority is bad. You know why the fuck it's bad? You're just saying that shit because you're trying to have a conversation in bad faith and you're trolling. And I really don't have time for all that shit. So I had that going on. And then I had somebody who got on there and I had to basically get their asses right real quick. I think they said something such as, I'm going to tell you real quick what they said actually, because I'm actually on my phone right now and I can actually go to the comments. Give me 1 second, y'all. Just got to scroll down real quick. So one of the people that came on there, I'm trying to find where they made that silly comment. In so many words, they basically said that I shouldn't get hold on 1 second, I'm almost there. They said you should never erase terms. Every term or phrase was new at some point. You, when they capitalize you in all letters, can choose not to use them or co-sign with what they mean, but you can't dictate how others express themselves. And I responded and I said, don't play the red herring game with me. You are switching up the definition of erase because you don't like what I said, not because you are adding value to the statement and you want to sound quote unquote right. When I say erase, clearly I mean and use it in a positive manner. But I got one better. My post was for those who choose to be off code. If you, and I capitalized you, want to choose to be off code and buck dance with these terms, that is your, and I capitalize your, prerogative, Bobby. You know, you get, guys, I'm just going to say this to y'all, and this is just a little piece of advice. I know some of you all say you don't have the time, don't have the energy to go back and forth with people, and I really don't either. And I do know my limits on when something is not really constructive, but sometimes you should. And the reason why is because sometimes you have to take these situations and use them as lessons and be able to show other people how certain things show up, how certain behaviors show up, how certain people show up, and why they behave the way that they do. And that whole statement that this person made, they were just using red herrings. What the hell did any of that shit about don't use this, all these terms had meaning at some point, and you know, you can't tell people to do this, you can't tell people to do that, yada 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 yada. What the hell did it have to do with anything that I said? I talked about the terms that I find annoying and that I feel black people should stop doing. So in other words, I'm not telling people how they should and should not operate per se. I'm telling black people who are codified the things that they should do, the things they should say, and the things that they shouldn't say. So in other words, the message is more so for people who are either codified or want to know the game, not for people who they're off code and they're really not trying to hear this, or they're just straight up Sambos. It's not really for any of them. So a lot of times when you listen to people, they give you red herrings. And if you don't know what a red herring is somebody who kind of almost makes like an adverse argument, like that sounds like it's in opposition to a statement that you've already made, but it has nothing to do with that statement. So I'm going to give you an example. If I go to the grocery store and I say, man, I don't like all of the broccoli here, it doesn't look good. Somebody who creates a red herring may say something to the effect of, well, why don't you just get asparagus then and stop fucking complaining? That's a red herring, because what the fuck does asparagus have to do with me talking about the bad broccoli there? Maybe I don't want asparagus. You just said that because you don't like the idea that I said something that didn't really resonate with you, whether it was the fact that I complained in general or whether the fact that I talked shit about the broccoli. You made a complaint or you gave a solution that was only given because of the fact that you didn't really like the statement that was initially made. So a lot of red herrings get thrown around by people when they really don't really rock with what you have to say, but they want to find some way to show passive aggression towards what you said. So anyway, family, that's really all I got for that. I just wanted to kind of let y'all know that it's important for us to just be careful about the terminology that we use. And it also is important for us to understand why and what are things that we should use instead, or what things should just be eliminated altogether. So let's just make sure that we are staying on code. We're watching what the things that we say, and we're also monitoring when people use these terms and just looking at the mentality of the individuals who are using them. Anyway, y'all, I got a lot of other episodes to come. I just wanted to make sure that I share this one with you. I hope y'all have a good day, night, wherever you are in the world. I don't know. And I'll be talking to y'all soon. Peace.